Lyra's small hands shook as she clutched the corner of the cold metal cage. She had heard stories of humans, but nothing could have prepared her for the fear that gripped her heart as she watched him approach. His tall, broad figure blocked the light above, casting a long shadow over her. The way he moved made her feel small, vulnerable, and hopeless. She had always been told humans were monsters, creatures of war and cruelty, who devoured weaker species. Like hers. The stories from her homeworld had painted humans as predators, and Lyra had no reason to think otherwise. Her tiny body trembled, hiding her face behind the bars of the cage. Her large eyes were wide with terror, the dark pupils reflecting the harsh lights above. She barely breathed, afraid that even the slightest sound would bring him closer. Mark, the human soldier, crouched down in front of the cage. His expression was hard, yet something about his eyes was different. They were calm, almost gentle, not the predatory eyes Lyra had been warned about. He studied her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. The memories of her planet, now torn apart by war, filled her mind. She remembered the cries of her people, the desperation in their voices, the fear in their eyes as they fled from human raids. They had always believed that the humans saw them as prey, nothing more than another species to conquer, another race to eliminate. And now Lyra was here, alone, caught in the humans' grip, with nowhere to run. Mark extended a hand toward her, palm open, but Lyra shrank back. She could hear her heart pounding in her chest. Her skin crawled, her instincts screamed for her to run, to hide, to escape. But there was nowhere to go. He didn't move closer. He just knelt there, watching her with quiet patience. His fingers remained outstretched, as if he were waiting for her to trust him. But trust was a luxury Lyra couldn't afford. Her people had learned the hard way that trust often led to betrayal. As she stared at his hand, Lyra's mind raced. She thought of the others who had been taken by humans, the ones who hadn't returned. Their bones were rumored to be scattered across distant worlds, a warning to those who dared to cross the humans. Lyra's parents had warned her to never trust a human. They had told her that no matter how kind they seemed, no matter how peaceful they appeared, they were always the enemy. Yet, there was something different about this one. He wasn't like the soldiers she had seen on her homeworld. Mark wasn't yelling or pointing weapons at her. He wasn't threatening or demanding anything. He simply sat there, waiting. The softness in his eyes made her wonder if the stories had been wrong, but Lyra couldn't risk it. She had to keep her distance, to stay vigilant. One wrong move, and she would be just another story of a poor alien taken by humans. Her body remained still, eyes fixed on his hand. She could feel her pulse racing, the cold sweat on her skin. She had never felt so helpless, so alone. She had never been this close to one of them. Was this how it ended? Was this the moment when she would become just another victim of the human soldiers? Mark didn't speak. His gaze never left her face, and for the longest time, neither of them moved. The silence stretched between them like a wall that neither could breach. Lyra could feel the weight of that silence pressing in on her, making her feel smaller with every passing second. She wondered what he was thinking. Did he know? How terrified she was. Did he even care? Finally, Mark broke the silence. His voice was calm, and his words were simple, almost like he was speaking to a child. Not a prisoner. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had never heard anything like that before. Was it true? Could it be true? She tried to steady her breath, but the words echoed in her mind. I don't believe you," she whispered to herself, too afraid to say the words aloud. Mark didn't respond immediately. He just sat there, as if he understood her fear. His eyes softened as he continued to watch her, and Lyra could see that he wasn't angry. He wasn't threatening. But that didn't make her feel any safer. It only made her question everything she had ever been taught. Lyra had heard stories of humans who pretended to be kind, only to strike when you least expected it. She had been told that kindness was a trap, a way to lure you in before they struck. Her people had learned the hard way not to trust, not to show weakness. But now, facing this human, she wasn't sure what to believe. She wasn't sure if her fear was justified or if she had simply been taught to fear for too long. Mark shifted slightly, and Lyra flinched, expecting him to reach for her, to grab her or hurt her. But he didn't. Instead, he pulled something from his pouch, a small piece of food. "I'm not going to hurt you," he repeated, his voice steady. "I'm just trying to help." The food was strange. It smelled different from the rations her people had, but it wasn't foul. It didn't make her stomach turn like the other things she had been given by her captors. But still, she hesitated. Her mind screamed at her to be careful, to keep her distance. She had heard of humans using food as a trick to get close, to lower their guard before the real attack came. But as she watched Mark, something shifted inside her. She had never seen anyone like him. He wasn't like the monsters she had been taught to fear. He seemed human. And for the first time, Lyra wondered if maybe, just maybe, she had been wrong. Lyra stayed in the cage, her heart still racing. She could see the food Mark had given her, but her fear kept her from touching it. She had heard stories about how the humans tricked their prisoners, offering kindness only to take advantage later. This was all a game, right? Mark wasn't here to help her. He was just using her trust as a way to control her. That's what Lyra believed. She looked at the food again, the strange smell coming from it. It wasn't like anything she had ever smelled before. It didn't smell bad, but it was different. She had no idea what it was, but it didn't seem dangerous. Still, she couldn't bring herself to take it. Mark watched her quietly, his expression calm, giving her space. He didn't say anything, just waited patiently. The silence between them stretched on, but Lyra could feel the weight of his gaze. On her, it wasn't threatening or angry, but it made her nervous all the same. "Eat it," Mark said after a while. His voice was soft and gentle, not demanding. "It will help you. You've been through a lot." Lyra stared at the food, her stomach growling quietly. She hadn't eaten in days, and she knew she needed something to survive. But how could she trust him? Her people had always been taught to be careful with humans. They were creatures of war and violence. This could be some kind of trap, a way to lower her guard before they hurt her. But then, she remembered her family's words. They had always warned her to be careful of humans, to never trust them. "They will trick you," her father had said. "They will pretend to be kind, but in the end, they always take what they want." Lyra closed her eyes, trying to push those thoughts away, but they lingered, making her hesitate. She didn't know what to do. She wanted to trust him, but every instinct in her body told her to stay away. Mark noticed her hesitation and sighed softly. "I know you're scared," he said quietly. "I understand. But I won't hurt you." For a long time, Lyra just stared at him, unsure of what to do. She could feel the food in her stomach calling to her, but her fear was stronger. It was hard to push aside everything she had learned growing up. She had always been told to distrust humans, to see them as enemies. But Mark wasn't like the others she had heard about. He wasn't angry. He wasn't violent. Slowly, she reached for the food, her fingers trembling. She didn't know if this was the right choice, but she had no other option. Her body needed the energy, and her fear was starting to give way to hunger. Mark watched her carefully, as if he were waiting for something. And when she picked up the food, he gave her a small, encouraging smile. "See," he said softly, "it's not so bad." Lyra took a small bite. The food was soft and warm. It wasn't like anything she had ever tasted, but it was good. It filled her stomach in a way she hadn't felt in days. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until the food touched her tongue. She ate more slowly, still unsure whether she could trust Mark or not. But as she ate, something began to shift inside her. She started to notice small things she hadn't seen before. Mark wasn't just sitting there waiting for her to eat. He was watching her, not with the eyes of a predator, but with the eyes of someone who wanted to help. His expression wasn't hard or angry, but patient, almost kind. Lyra's eyes flickered up to meet his. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark paused for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "I'm not your enemy," he said. "I'm just a soldier. I don't want to hurt you." Lyra didn't know what to say. To that, her whole life, she had been taught to believe that humans were dangerous, that they only cared about themselves, that they would do anything to survive, even if it meant hurting others. But Mark wasn't like the stories. He didn't act like the humans she had been warned about. She ate more. Slowly, her mind still whirling with thoughts she couldn't quite understand. She had been wrong about so many things, hadn't she? Was it possible that humans weren't as evil as her people had made them out to be? She didn't know, but for the first time since she had been taken, she felt a small flicker of hope. After she finished the food, Mark stood up and moved away from the cage. He didn't leave, but he stepped back a few paces, giving her space. She wasn't sure why, but the way he treated her, the way he respected her boundaries, made her feel a little safer. "You should rest," he said. "You've been through a lot." Lyra didn't know if she could sleep. The cage felt cold and uncomfortable, and her mind was still racing. But Mark's presence, his calmness, made her feel a little less afraid. She lay down in the corner of the cage, trying to make herself comfortable, but she couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. She had eaten the food. She had trusted him, even just a little. Was that a mistake? Had she made a terrible choice? Her mind kept spinning, but eventually, exhaustion caught up with her. She closed her eyes, letting the darkness pull her into sleep. As she drifted off, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Mark hadn't hurt her. He hadn't treated her like an enemy. And for the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, the humans weren't all bad. Lyra woke up in the same cold cage, the faint light of the space station creeping through the bars. The air felt different this morning, warmer somehow. She shifted, trying to stretch her stiff muscles, but she didn't feel the same fear that had gripped her the night before. The memory of Mark's kindness, the food he gave her, and the way he had treated her, it all felt different now. Her mind couldn't stop going back to those moments. Was she wrong about humans? Was everything she had been told a lie? As she moved, she noticed the door to her cage was slightly open. Mark had left it unlocked. He was gone, but there was no sign of danger. Lyra felt a strange mix of confusion and curiosity. She wasn't sure if she should be happy that she was still alive or angry that she was still a prisoner. The human had shown kindness, but what did that really mean? Could she trust him? Was this all some kind of trick? For the first time, Lyra stood up and walked toward the bars, peering out. The space station was quiet, the hum of machinery filling the air. The walls were cold metal, the kind of place she had always imagined humans would live. But as she looked around, she saw no signs of hostility, no signs of danger. Everything seemed peaceful, normal. Too normal. She glanced around, wondering if Mark was nearby. She didn't want to risk making a run for it, not without knowing what was going on. She didn't know the rules of this place, or where the other prisoners were. Was she the only one here? What happened to the others who had been taken by the humans? Were they being treated the same way she was? Lyra's stomach growled again. The food Mark had given her was the first real meal she had eaten in days, maybe even longer. She felt weaker than she liked to admit. She couldn't stay here forever, locked in a cage. She needed to find out what was going on. But was she ready to trust Mark? Just as she was about to turn away, she heard footsteps. Her heart skipped a beat. She quickly ducked back behind the cage, hiding in the shadows. She didn't know who was coming, but she wasn't going to let her guard down. Her fear still held her tight, even after everything that had happened. Her people's survival depended on it. The footsteps stopped right in front of her cage. Mark's face appeared, looking down at her with those calm eyes. "You're up," he said, his voice soft, like he didn't want to startle her. "How are you feeling?" Lyra didn't answer right away. She stared at him, trying to read his expression. He didn't seem like the monster she had feared. He wasn't a monster at all, but the fear inside her was hard to shake off. "I'm okay," she said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. Why are you helping me?" Mark didn't answer right away. He just stared at her for a long moment, his eyes thoughtful. Then he spoke, his tone steady and calm. "I told you already," he said softly. "I'm not your enemy. I'm just doing my job. I don't want to hurt you." Lyra stared at him, her thoughts racing. She didn't know whether to believe him or not. He had been kind to her, yes. But what did that really mean? Was he just trying to soften her up before something worse happened? Or was he telling the truth? Was there really a chance she could trust him? Mark seemed to sense her hesitation. He stepped back a little, giving her more space. His actions were gentle, like he understood how fragile her trust was. "I'll be back soon," he said. "Stay here and rest. Don't worry. I'm not going to hurt you." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the cage once more. Lyra felt a strange emptiness settle in her chest. She wanted to believe him, but every instinct she had told her not to. The fear of what humans had done to her people was deeply ingrained in her. It wasn't easy to push that fear aside. She sat down in the corner of the cage, hugging her knees to her chest. Her mind kept going back to the strange feeling she had when Mark showed her kindness. She hadn't expected it. It didn't make sense. He was a human, the enemy, the one her people had feared for generations. How could he be any different from the others? But then, she remembered how he had looked at her, the softness in his eyes, the way he didn't treat her like a monster. Her heart twisted in confusion. Maybe he was different. Maybe not all humans were the same. But could she trust that? She lay back on the cold floor of the cage, her mind still racing. She didn't know how long she had been there. Time didn't matter to her anymore. Everything was uncertain, and every choice seemed to bring her closer to a decision she wasn't ready to make. The door opened again, and this time, Mark didn't come alone. 2 other humans entered, carrying supplies. They didn't look at Lyra at first, but she could feel their eyes on her. She didn't move. She stayed in the corner, watching them carefully. Unsure of what to do. Mark spoke to them briefly in their language, and then one of them turned toward Lyra. This one was different. She was smaller than Mark, with short hair and a softer face. She smiled at Lyra, and there was something in her smile that felt genuine. "She's awake," the woman said. "How is she doing?" Mark nodded. "She's scared, but she's okay. She hasn't eaten in days, so she might be a little weak." The woman nodded and then turned to Lyra. "Hi, I'm Emily," she said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you, okay?" Lyra didn't respond right away. She just stared at the woman, her eyes wide. She didn't know what to make of her kindness. Was this just another part of the trap? Was she being softened up so they could control her? Emily took a step closer to the cage, but she didn't try to touch Lyra. She just knelt down and smiled again. "I know you're scared," she said, her voice soothing. "But we're not your enemies. We're here to help." Lyra's heart raced. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. But something in Emily's voice made her hesitate. Was there truth in her words? Could this really be a chance for peace? Or was it just another lie? Mark looked at Emily and then back at Lyra. "We're not like the others," he said. "We just want to help you. You don't have to be afraid." Lyra didn't know how to respond. She wanted to believe them, but the fear was still there, deep inside her. The question remained, could she trust them? Lyra sat in her cage, her eyes flicking between Mark and Emily. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion and fear. She couldn't understand what was happening. One moment, the humans had been her captors. The next, they were offering her kindness. She had never experienced anything like this before, and it made her question everything she had ever been taught about humans. Emily and Mark spoke to each other quietly in their language, but Lyra couldn't focus on their words. She could feel the tension in the air, the silence that stretched between them. Her stomach rumbled again, but she wasn't sure if she was hungry for food or for answers. After a few moments, Mark turned back to her. "I know you don't trust us yet," he said gently. "But I promise you, we're not your enemies. We've been trying to stop the fighting. We want peace, not war." Lyra didn't respond right away. She wanted to believe him, but every part of her told her not to. She had been raised to see humans as nothing but predators, beings who took what they wanted and left destruction behind. The humans she had heard about were violent, cruel, but Mark. Mark was different. Still, she couldn't let herself forget who they were. She had to be careful. She had to keep her guard up. Lyra's thoughts raced, her mind a battle between the fear she had always known and the new, strange feelings that were starting to surface. "I'm not sure what to believe," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You say you want peace, but how do I know you're not lying?" Mark met her gaze and nodded slowly. "I understand why you feel that way. It's hard to trust when you've been hurt. But the truth is, we're not all the same. There are those of us who want peace. And we need your help to make that happen." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. "My help?" she asked. "Why would you want my help?" "I'm just just a prisoner." Mark's eyes softened. "You're not just a prisoner, Lyra. You're a person. And you have a voice. Your people have been through a lot, and we know that. But if we work together, we can stop the violence. We can end this war, but we need you to trust us." Lyra didn't know how to respond to that. Could she really trust them? She had heard stories of humans offering peace, only to turn their backs once they had what they wanted. But Mark wasn't like the stories. He was offering something different, something she couldn't fully understand. Emily stepped forward then, holding something in her hands. It was a small device with strange symbols on it. She held it out to Lyra, her expression serious. "This is a communicator," Emily explained. "It will allow you to talk to your people. We know you're worried about them. We want to help you get in touch with them. But you have to trust us, Lyra." Lyra stared at the device, unsure what to think. She had never seen anything like it before. It looked advanced, something her people wouldn't have been able to create. She could feel the weight of the decision in front of her. Her people were out there somewhere, and she had to find a way to get back to them. But was this a trap? Was this just another human trick? Mark spoke again, his voice steady and reassuring. "We're not going to use you, Lyra. We want to end the war, and you can help us do that. We can help you get back to your people, but we have to work together." Lyra's mind was in turmoil. The fear still clung to her, but now there was something else too, something she had never felt before. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the humans weren't all as bad as she had been taught. Hope that peace was possible. Slowly, Lyra reached out and took the device from Emily. Her fingers brushed against Emily's hand, and for a moment, she felt the warmth in the human's touch. It wasn't cold or harsh, like she had expected. It felt like kindness. "I don't know if I can trust you," Lyra said, her voice shaking slightly. "But I'll try, for my people. If there's even a chance we can end the war, I have to try." Mark smiled, a small but genuine smile. "That's all we ask, Lyra. We're in this together now." Lyra felt a weight lift off her chest, though it was replaced by uncertainty. She didn't know if this was the right choice, but she couldn't ignore the small spark of hope inside her. For the first time since she had been taken, she felt like there was a chance for something better. Maybe humans weren't as bad as she had thought. Maybe they were capable of change, just like her people were. With the communicator in her hand, Lyra stood up and walked to the small window of her cage. She looked out at the space station, her heart pounding. Somewhere out there, her people were waiting. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing for sure: her life had changed. And the path ahead was uncertain, but it was a path she was ready to take. The door to her cage opened again, and Mark stepped inside. "Are you ready?" he asked. Lyra didn't answer right away. She looked at the communicator in her hand, then back at Mark. She could see the sincerity in his eyes. It was hard to ignore it, hard to deny the small part of her that wanted to believe. "I'm ready," she said softly, her voice stronger than before. Mark nodded and gestured for her to follow him. "We have a lot of work to do, but together, we can make a difference." As Lyra stepped out of the cage, she felt a strange mix of fear and hope inside her. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that for the first time in a long time, she wasn't alone. She had a chance to change the future, and maybe, just maybe, humans weren't the monsters she had always believed them to be. Lyra followed Mark through the halls of the space station, her heart still heavy with doubt. The communicator she had been given was now securely tucked in her hand, but it felt like a burden as much as it did a lifeline. She had no idea what the humans wanted from her, or if this was a mistake she would regret. Yet something inside her told her that this path, this uncertain, dangerous path, was the only way forward. As they moved deeper into the station, Lyra noticed more humans. They were busy with their tasks, but no one looked at her with suspicion or fear. There was no sign of the hostility she had expected. No signs of anger. They weren't like the monsters her people had feared. They were just people. People who had lived through their own struggles. People who had their own goals, their own lives. For a moment, Lyra felt like she was seeing them for the first time, not as enemies, but as fellow beings, all fighting. For something. Mark stopped in front of a small room, turning to look at her. His face was still calm, his eyes steady, but she could see the weight of the situation on his shoulders. He had to know the risk he was taking. If she refused to help, if she chose to go back to her people and warn them of the humans, there would be no coming back from it. "This is where we make contact," Mark said, his voice quiet. "We'll send the signal to your people. I won't force you to do anything. The decision is yours." Lyra felt a sharp pain in her chest. She had been thinking about this moment ever since she was given the communicator. She had no idea what to say to her people. How would they respond? Would they see this as a chance to end the war, or would they view it as another trap? Would they listen to her, or would they attack the humans on sight? She glanced at the device in her hand, its smooth surface gleaming under the lights of the room. It was small, but its power was enormous. It was a bridge between two worlds, a chance to change everything. But that didn't make it any less terrifying. Mark seemed to sense her hesitation. "If you don't want to do this, I won't force you," he said softly. "But think about it. This could change everything. You've been taught to fear humans, and I know that's not easy to forget. But there are humans who want peace. Not all of us are like the ones who've hurt your people." Lyra's heart was pounding in her chest. She thought of her homeworld. The destruction, the pain, the suffering. Her people had been at war for so long. She had lost so much. And now, here she was, holding the key to something that could end the fighting. Could it really work? Could humans and her people live in peace? "I'm scared," Lyra whispered, the words coming out before she could stop them. "What if this is a mistake? What if they don't believe me?" Mark took a step closer, his eyes full of understanding. "I know it's hard. But peace starts with small steps. If you trust us, if you give us this chance, we can make things better." But it has to start somewhere. Lyra looked at the communicator again. It felt like everything was resting on her shoulders. She had the power to change the future of her people. But that power also came with responsibility. She wasn't sure. If she was ready for that. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, her hand trembling as she placed the communicator on the table. Mark was right. Peace couldn't happen without a first step, without someone willing to take that chance. And maybe, just maybe, she could be that person. "This is it," Lyra said, her voice shaking. "I'm ready." Mark nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You're not alone in this, Lyra. We're with you." The room filled with a low hum as Mark activated the device. The lights on the communicator flickered, and for a moment, Lyra held her breath. Would they respond? Would they hear her voice? Or would her people see this as a betrayal? Moments passed, but then, the screen on the communicator blinked to life. A face appeared, a face Lyra recognized. It was her mother. She hadn't seen her in so long, not since she was taken. Her mother's eyes widened in shock when she saw Lyra's face. "Lyra?" Her mother's voice came through, filled with disbelief and relief. "Is that really you? Where have you been?" Lyra felt tears well up in her eyes as she saw her mother's face again. She had missed her so much. But now everything felt different. She wasn't the same girl who had been taken. She had changed. Her world had changed. "I'm here, Mother," Lyra said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm alive. And I'm not alone." There was a long pause on the other end of the communicator, as if her mother didn't know what to say. Finally, her mother spoke, her voice trembling. Are you with the humans?" she asked, her tone filled with fear. "Are they keeping you there? What have they done to you?" Lyra closed her eyes, her chest tight with the weight of her words. "They haven't hurt me," she said softly. "They've shown me kindness. They want peace, Mother. They want to end the war." There was another long silence, and Lyra could feel the tension on the other end. She knew what her mother must be thinking. The idea of peace with humans must seem impossible. Her people had been fighting for so long that the thought of trusting the humans felt like a betrayal. But Lyra couldn't let fear control her anymore. She had to take this step, even if her people didn't understand. She had to believe that peace was possible, that the humans were capable of change, just as she was. "Please, Mother," Lyra said, her voice pleading. "We can end this. We don't have to keep fighting. Please, trust me." After what felt like an eternity, her mother finally spoke. I don't know, Lyra. This is so much to take in, but if you believe this is the right choice, I trust you. You've always been brave. If this is the path you've chosen, I'll stand by you." Lyra's heart swelled with relief, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of hope. Her mother had accepted her choice. They had taken the first step toward peace, and now, it was up to them to make it work. Mark's hand rested gently on Lyra's shoulder, a silent show of support. Together, they had opened the door to a new future, one where trust and peace could replace fear and war. Lyra looked at the communicator again, her heart full. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Thank you for trusting me." Mark smiled softly, his eyes warm with pride. "You did it, Lyra. You made the choice for peace. And that's something no one can take away from you." Lyra took a deep breath and looked toward the future, knowing that this was only the beginning. But with the humans by her side, she felt ready for whatever came next. Together, they would build a future one where fear no longer ruled and hope had a place to grow.